Now that the SEC baseball regular season is behind us, and today is officially the first day in Hoover of the SEC baseball tournament, here's my overall LSU takeaway. Anything short of a national championship is a disappointment.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, you can also find us on YouTube as well, which, of course, we are free and also available every single day on YouTube as well. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I'm your host, as I am every single day. You can follow me on Twitter at Caroline Fenton1. You can also follow along with the podcast on Twitter at Locked On LSU, wherever you decide to listen, whenever, however you decide to listen. However you decide to interact with the podcast, like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all of that great stuff. Just appreciate you for being here and appreciate you for making Locked On LSU your first to listen every single day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. But let's get into it. Happy first day of the SEC tournament, everyone. We made it through one full game without a rain delay, which it just feels like it's almost comical at this point how many rain delays happen every single year in Hoover. It's like death, taxes, rain delays in the SEC baseball tournament. Like, I feel like it's going to get to some point where we're going to have to reevaluate where we're playing these games. We're going to have to reevaluate. Maybe we play in a dome at this point. But I mean, Alabama in May, weather is just way too unpredictable and way too wet every single year. But anyways, happy first day of the SEC tournament. LSU is a top 4 seed, so LSU had a bye in the first round of the tournament. LSU will start their Hoover action tomorrow morning, bright and early at 9:30 a.m. And I want to get into the game info. South Carolina blew out Georgia earlier this morning, 9-0. So South Carolina will face LSU tomorrow in the early game. We'll get into that coming up next. But first, I just kind of want to set the tone. Now that we're officially in the postseason, I want to reiterate a take I had at the very beginning of the baseball season. It's kind of a full circle, 360, putting a bow on things, because my thoughts on this team and these expectations haven't changed in the slightest. In fact, they've only gotten stronger. My feelings have only gotten stronger. We learned earlier this week that Paul Skenes earned SEC Pitcher of the Year honors. Very well deserved. I don't know who else it would even have gone to. We also learned that Dylan Cruz earned SEC Player of the Year honors. Also, very, very, very well deserved. I'm not surprised, but of course, equally as excited. And they should be too, and I believe that they are. I mean, you look at Paul Skenes. It's the 4th best ERA in college baseball, the best ERA in the SEC with 1.77. He leads college baseball in strikeouts with 164. And just to put that in a little bit of perspective for everyone, he has 164 strikeouts. The second most in college baseball is 124. That's a 40 strikeout difference. And then you look at the most in the SEC. Well, of course, obviously, Paul Skenes has the most in the SEC if he has the most in college baseball. But also, he has the most strikeouts in the SEC by 54 strikeouts. That is astronomical. That is unbelievable. And I mean, those are just stats to kind of back up how we already feel about Paul Skenes, and what we already know about Paul Skenes is that he is the best pitcher in college baseball. He is one of those guys that you just, when he's on the mound, you just feel good about it. And I think the players feel that too. It's kind of a trickle-down effect. Whenever Paul Skenes is on the mound, everyone just shows up with a little bit more swagger. We already know that. Paul Skenes is the best pitcher in college baseball. Same thing with Dylan Cruz. I think we know that Dylan Cruz is the best player in the SEC, one of the best players in college baseball, if not the best player in college baseball. And I feel like we have a tendency with Paul Skenes and Dylan Cruz both to kind of take them for granted. Like, it's almost hilarious whenever I hear talk about Dylan Cruz's slump at the plate whenever he's still batting 400 plus. And I get it. I know, whenever Dylan Cruz takes off the Superman cape and we kind of see that, oh wow, he really is human. I think it's a little bit of a reminder that he's not always going to be, several dingers every single game. But whenever Dylan Cruz is having a, you know, not as electric day, it's all of a sudden he's in a slump, and we take that for granted. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because that's how good those guys truly are. I mean, Dylan Cruz has the best batting average in the SEC, the seventh best in college baseball. He has the third best on base percentage in the country, the best in the SEC. I mean, well over half of Dylan Cruz's at bats, he ends up on base. You just don't find that very frequently. And those are just these two players that I'm acknowledging that just earned those SEC honors, SEC Pitcher of the Week and SEC Player of the Week for Paul Skenes and Dylan Cruz, respectively. That's all the new news. That's the exciting part about all of this. That's what's new. None of that is a surprise to any of us. But now that we've been now that we have wrapped up the regular season, now that we've seen what these players can do, it's not just about the hype, it's about what they actually have done. And then you add in the rest of the production from the rest of this team. I mean, you've got the guy who leads the nation in RBIs in Tommy White. You've got the clutchest guys that show up in moments that they need to be there, and Gavin Dugas and Hayden Travinsky. I mean, you've got so much Tre Morgan. You've got so much talent on this team. It's just Dylan Cruz and Paul Skenes that got recognized earlier this week with SEC honors. But we know that underneath them, around them, in the lineup, in the bullpen, in the dugout, is so much talent. Is guys that can show up on any given day. So that's why my sentiment at the beginning of the season has only grown stronger, and I'll reiterate it now. And that's anything short of a championship for this team is a major disappointment. You have the best player and the best pitcher in the SEC. You probably have the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in this year's MLB Draft. Now, that's just not SEC we're talking here. We're talking all of college baseball plus all of those high school prospects. And you've got the 2 best players in this year's draft. I know that championships are really hard to win. We've been there before. We know how hard it is to win a College World Series. I mean, Ole Miss last year never really seemed like anything that special, and they just got hot at the right time. They went on a run at the right time, and they ultimately won a championship out of it. I don't think that Ole Miss was the best team in the country this past season, but they were able to leverage what they did have into a championship. 2017, look at all that talent that LSU 2017 had on it. They fell short in the final, just against a really good Florida team. And every team that LSU is going to face from now until the rest of the road to Omaha is going to be a really good team. I mean, the SEC tournament alone has probably the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. And on the path to Omaha, it only gets more difficult. So I know that you might be listening to me and saying you're absolutely crazy. You can't say that. You can't say that knowing how hard it is to win a championship. I know how hard it is to win a championship. In this sport, anything can happen. Any team can get hot at the right time. Any team can experience injuries at the worst time. I know. Baseball's a kooky little sport, especially college baseball. But all of that considered, I still think that anything short of a championship for this team is a disappointment. You have 2 of the best players in the country on your team. In addition to really, really, really solid 2 elite pieces around them. You have the number 1 recruiting class in the country, the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. You avoided a sweep in every single series of conference play in the most difficult and competitive conference in all of college baseball. This team is championship caliber. And now that we're in the postseason, now that they're going to pave their path to potentially get to Omaha and win in Omaha, let's not forget what the expectation should be with the talent on this team. But what's in store for LSU tomorrow in Hoover? We'll get into that coming up next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right, $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. The Lakers, LeBron, AD, and the Lakers get swept by the Denver Nuggets. Man, that team is red hot, 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 hot. So I'm riding with the Joker and the Nuggets throughout the rest of the NBA Finals. But hey, that's my take. Do it how you want to do it. You can pick who you think is going to win the NBA Finals, or you can check on FanDuel and check out their great promotions every single day that you can kind of combine single game bets into a same game parlay and get an opportunity at getting an even bigger payout. So always check to see what kind of promos are going on in the FanDuel Sportsbook app. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Every day is coming up tomorrow on the podcast. How much better is this LSU defensive line in 2023 than it was in 2022? And is it the best in the country? We'll address that on tomorrow's podcast. But I want to give a little bit of a Hoover preview going into LSU's matchup with South Carolina on Wednesday morning. South Carolina just absolutely whooped Georgia on Tuesday morning, 9-0. They will play, South Carolina and LSU will play at 9:30 a.m. sharp, early morning, early start for the Tigers. How does Jay Johnson feel about such an early game?
That's where we're scheduled. Fitting 4 games into a day is a challenge when sometimes you deal with rain and TV and all those factors. So didn't really put much thought into it. We'll be there when they tell us to play, and they told us 9:30.
I love that. Who cares when it is? Who cares if it's 9:30 a.m. or 9:30 p.m. or 4 a.m. or midnight or 5 p.m.? Who cares? Who gives a rat's butt about that? I mean, play when you play. No, the Hoover construction of the schedule is not the best. Yeah, there's always teams that are stuck playing at like 10 o'clock at night because games go long and there are rain delays. We made it through one single game this morning, one game without a rain delay. And that might be a Hoover record, honestly. So who cares when you play? Show up when you're told, play the games, execute, move forward, survive, and advance. And I think too, I understand that timing, it's whatever. Also, I think 9:30 might be the perfect time because it's not going to be too hot at that time. But LSU is coming into this game with I think of a fresh perspective. Because remember, LSU went straight from Athens to Hoover. So they played in Athens Thursday, Friday, Saturday in that 3-game series against Georgia, and then they hit the road to Hoover. So they spent Friday, Sunday, Monday, now Tuesday. So 3 full days of rest in Hoover, and then they play on Wednesday. So they've got 3 nights in the hotel to rest, relax, recoup, mentally get ready, physically get 100%. And I think that that's an advantage that really does help LSU. Because it's not just LSU's schedule that's been absolutely crazy and bonkers for the last 3 months. All of college baseball has had the craziest schedule the last few months. You're playing 4 games a week, quick turnarounds, long road trips, bad weather, injuries. We all know the story of how difficult a college baseball season can be. So what does it mean to Jay Johnson for this team to have those 3 nights of rest and to just have nothing to do for a few days other than just focus on the task at hand on Wednesday morning? This was Jay Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's very important. We try to be intentional with everything we do to help the players prepare to have success. And it just didn't make a lot of sense to fly all the way home and then bus 6 hours when we could just drive, 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's a well-deserved 3-day break without a game. I don't know that we've had one of those in a long time throughout the schedule. And, with our team, there's certain key players that have pretty much played every pitch of every inning of every game. I think, Jordan and Dylan have played every game since I've been the coach here. And so for them to be able to rest their bodies and rest their minds a little bit, I think is a good thing.
Absolutely, it is a good thing because we know the grind of the season. And looking at the last three of the series of the regular season, Auburn and Mississippi State, pitching wise, things didn't look very great. And it's something that I've talked about on the podcast, and I'm sure you've thought about yourself and you've talked about with your fellow LSU friends is, do they just seem to in their heads? Having some time to just think, sit, breathe, rest, relax, meditate, work out, stretch, whatever you need to do. I don't see how it can be a bad thing. So I think that is a good thing, especially considering how early the game is tomorrow, that they can, take a few days, just chill, and then be set and ready and totally focused, 100% refreshed going into Hoover. That's the other great thing about having being a top 4 seed is that you get that first day off. You're already ahead of the 8 ball because you don't have to burn one of your arms or several of your arms in game 1. You can rest that first day, get acclimated in Hoover, and pick things up in round 2. But LSU plays South Carolina on Wednesday, and South Carolina is really it's a tricky team. It's a tricky team to put my finger on. South Carolina beat Georgia 9-0 today, just totally smoked them. James Hicks started on the mound. That was only his 4th start this season. So I thought to myself, okay, that's an interesting strategy. What's going on here? Not a bad outing whatsoever. 6.2 innings, only gave up 4 hits, walked 2, struck out 6. Solid inning for a guy who's not a consistent starter. And South Carolina's head coach mentioned that South Carolina's bullpen is undergoing some injuries. They have been struck by the injury bug. Chris Veach, right-handed pitcher day-to-day with a hip injury. Right-handed pitcher Eli Jerzenbeck, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, out for the season. Will Sanders, another right-handed pitcher in the rotation, was out this past weekend, but is more so day-to-day, hoping that he can get back for Hoover. But really, South Carolina's bullpen right now is a little bit thinner than it was when LSU played this team earlier in the season. But South Carolina has such a freaking deep bullpen that they can afford some of those injuries. I'm sure they wouldn't want to, but they can at least because they have such an incredibly deep bullpen. Cade Austin pitched in relief of James Hicks, only went 2.1 innings. So that's an arm that can be healthy and fresh, if not tomorrow for the rest of the week. So that just kind of is a testament to South Carolina's depth there. But South Carolina is a tricky team because they swept Florida, a team that's the co-SEC regular season champs, for whatever that's worth. And then they lost a series to Auburn. And then they got swept by Kentucky. And Kentucky's not some, amazing, magnificent, incredible, show-stopping team. Good team, not an elite team. Then they lost series to Arkansas and Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's a team that's heating up, even though they had struggled against Texas A&M today. Lost that series to Arkansas. Arkansas also a team that maybe went through a little rocky, rougher patch at the beginning of the season, but has looked phenomenal at the late half of the season. So South Carolina, to me, it's a very winnable game. It's also a very losable game. But I do think that it is to LSU's advantage, one, that they didn't play today, and two, LSU played South Carolina earlier this season. Now, I don't know if they're going to be seeing the same arms that they saw. Remember, that it was a 2-game series because there was a weird weather issue. So I don't know exactly how much this team resembles what it was earlier in the season, but I do think that does work to LSU's advantage. Just a reminder that I have for everybody coming up next of how we should approach this weekend, how we should approach Hoover. And even I kind of struggle with it sometimes. We'll get into that coming up next. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Today, Tuesday, was the first day of action in Hoover. South Carolina took down Georgia, so LSU will face South Carolina tomorrow. Texas A&M and Tennessee are in action as we speak. They're under a rain delay late in that game. But we'll finish out the rest of the day, and LSU starts the morning tomorrow with their matchup with South Carolina at 9:30, bright and early, with Vanderbilt rounding out the action on Wednesday, late at night, whenever that game happens, with the inevitable rain delays. Knock on all the wood. But I struggle with this, honestly. I struggle with how to approach tournaments, conference tournaments, because one side of me thinks it's doesn't really matter, you know. Yes, it's nice to boast an SEC championship, and it's always great to get those trophies, and you can put that in the trophy case, and that's something that you can sell to recruits, and it's something exciting to celebrate, and it's t-shirts that we can buy, it's bragging rights, it's a testament to this team. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. I care about Omaha championships, not necessarily Hoover championships. Now, you can have both. I prefer both. I'd like to have both. But I don't blame coaches that might approach this like, we don't want to burn our arms in Hoover when we have much bigger work and much more important things to get done in the regional next week. I don't blame coaches who may approach the tournament like, let's just get in there, play our best baseball, stay in shape. Let's not get hurt. Let's take care of business, do what we can do, and then move forward into the rest of postseason. I don't blame that side, that kind of line of thinking. And sometimes I kind of think about that too. Like, it's Hoover, it's not Omaha. Like, there's bigger fish to fry here. And then the other side of it is, well, yeah, but you want to win every single game that you play. Doesn't matter if it's at Hoover, doesn't matter if it's in Baton Rouge, doesn't matter if it's in Columbia, South Carolina, doesn't matter if it's in Knoxville, Tennessee, doesn't matter if it's in Omaha, Nebraska, doesn't matter if it's on Mars. Every game you play, you want to be competitive. Every game you play, you want to win. Every opportunity that you can get to hoist a trophy and assert your dominance around the rest of the league and around the rest of college baseball, you're going to take that opportunity. And I think that the truth kind of lies somewhere in the middle of, you aren't going to sacrifice your bullpen, arms, the health of your players for a championship in Hoover. But you're still going to go out there and fight your freaking butts off. Because Jay Johnson was asked about that kind of dichotomy of, yeah, it's great to win in Hoover, but also we've got more business coming down the line. Kind of, how do you approach that with the team? How do you approach that with your own kind of philosophy? This was Jay Johnson on his SEC tournament approach.
It's a unique situation. This team's done such a good job with the regular season schedule. Like, we've played our way to where we want to be and playing postseason baseball at home. And so that's ultimately, I want these guys to get to Omaha. I want them to experience Omaha. And so the tournament that's going to decide that, we've done what we need to do, in regards to that. With that being said, we don't cancel games that we schedule, for any reason. We've talked about that before. And if you put the Tiger uniform on, whether it's the purple, the gold, or pinstripe or white or gray jersey, there's an expectation that we're competing to win. Like I said, these guys are winners and we play to win. I'll be the one that'll make the decisions, maybe what's in the best interest of next week. But, Dylan Cruz is going to step in the box and you're going to compete, to beat that pitcher's tail, and whoever we put on a mound at whatever time, they're going to try to execute. And, we're excited to be here. I think it's one of the best events in all of amateur baseball. And so there's a little bit of energy that comes along with it. So the players just need to go play and compete, and I'll handle those, maybe long-term or next week type decisions as they're relative to this.
Just take care of business. Just be as competitive as you can possibly be. approach every single game like it's win and go home. I think that that's the way that you should approach South Carolina tomorrow. That's how you should approach, hypothetically speaking, Wake Forest in the College World Series final. It's how you should approach Nichols in a midweek game. Get up there, take care of business, do what you need to do, be as competitive as you possibly can, and then go from there. I think that's the way that you should approach it. Be as competitive as you possibly can. Survive in advance. And that's kind of the tough thing that I feel about Hoover is if LSU does not end the SEC tournament with a championship, this season is very much so alive. The most important pursuit, the most important championship is still very much so in play. LSU's going to host. The seed is pretty much is taken care of. All of that is set. You don't need to worry about that. That's the most important thing. So if LSU gets bounced in round 3 or 4 or whatever it is, that's unfortunate and that stinks and you want to see this team have a trophy show for itself. It's not the end of the world. But if they do win, then hell yeah, carry that momentum into regionals. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. Every dayers. Tomorrow on the show, some defensive line talk. This best unit in all of college baseball, all of college football. We'll get into that on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.